Welcome to the Orange Peel Podcast, where we peel the covers off to expose juicy hidden truths. The truth we will expose today is the state of race relations in America and the church. Racism is the belief that some races are innately superior to others, and that members of low-status races should be limited to low-status jobs or enslavement and be excluded from access to political power, economic resources, and unrestricted civil rights. The idea of race presupposes that humans can be divided into separate and exclusive biological groups based upon physical, intellectual, behavioral, and cultural traits. And these classifications determine their God-given role and rights in the world. This belief is at the root of the British and American imperialism that encouraged them to go into countries already inhabited and take them for themselves. Some imperialists point to the Bible and God telling Israel to make war on the inhabitants of Canaan to take the land for themselves as justification for their worldwide conquests. This is the story of America, and therefore also the story of the church in America. Religious and non-religious whites alike work together to embed racist beliefs, dispositions, and policies into every American institution to guarantee the supposed divine right of whites. And these biases are alive and well today, poisoning the hearts of citizens, and often making a mockery of American justice, democracy, and sadly, Christianity. The Declaration of Independence says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Though it says all men, the principle has only been applied consistently to white men. To our shame, other countries have often mocked us for the contradiction that is racism in America and the American church. It has been said that the worship hour is the most segregated hour of the week. Minorities tried to appeal to the conscience of the majority by accepting racial separation as long as there was equal treatment under the law and equal access to privilege. However, civil rights leaders soon learned that the separate but equal doctrine does not work. Like democracy, separate but equal only works when a godly morality governs society. Only then are people willing to accept that all men, regardless of race, are created equal and deserve equal access to rights and privilege. Thoughtful leaders of both races decided equality could only be achieved through forced integration because the truth had been revealed that people holding power over others cannot be trusted to share it freely. This force was applied through civil rights legislation, forced busing, affirmative action programs, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, but has been consistently met with vehement opposition by a large and vocal part of majority citizens. Much progress has been made in race relations in America, and in many places, people of different races work, play, and live together in harmony, and the most segregated hour is less segregated. Yet there remains an unholy divide in America and in the church regarding race. Even the religion of science, which proved there is only a 1 to 3% variation in the human gene pool, cannot encourage us to surrender our fear of one another and the errant notions of superiority, inferiority, and the meaning of color and observable physical differences. Why are we still plagued by this civil pathology, and what should Christians do about it? What is the outlook for America and the church given its resistance to equal treatment under the law? We welcome an extraordinary guest today to grab a paring knife and help us peel away the cover on this juicy fruit. Jerry Taylor has served as the director of the John Spain Center for Racial and Spiritual Studies at Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas. He was born in Covington, Tennessee, known for being the home of singer, the late Isaac Hayes. Covington is also near Henning, Tennessee, the home of author, the late Alex Haley. After graduating high school in 1987, Jerry went on to Southwestern Christian College to study ministry, graduating in 1984. He continued on to graduate from SMU, receiving a Master of Divinity in 1988. With stops along the way in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia, Jerry found his way to Abilene Christian University as a college professor, where he has served for the last 21 years. Jerry continues to hold an active pulpit ministry at the North 10th and Treadaway Church of Christ in Abilene, Texas. Jerry is eminently qualified to wield the sharp knife of analysis to help us peel the covers off the juicy subject of race relations in America and the church. So stick around and take a nourishing sip, won't you?
On this first day of Black History Month, 2025, we prayerfully pause to comfort the Hairston family and to honor the extraordinary life of Dr. Andrew Jasper Hairston, a man of profound wisdom, integrity, and courage. Dr. Hairston embodied unrelenting resilience and a beautiful brilliance that brightly stretched across 92 years of excellent service to God and to humanity. In the evening years of his life, Dr. Hairston grew troubled by the national erosion of the principles he had spent his long life defending. It seemed as if America's moral compass, once steady and true, had lost its direction. The needle that once pointed toward integrity now spun aimlessly, unhooked from the guiding principles of truth and justice. Before he closed his eyes and reclined into that eternal sleep, he saw what had become of the justice he once believed in. The courts, meant to stand firm in truth, had bent under the weight of greed and partisanship. Decisions were no longer guided by fairness, but by power. No longer shaped by law, but by influence. The highest courts in the land had been seized by those who cared little for truth. The robes of justice no longer stood for impartiality, but had become disguises for those who served only themselves. Beneath the surface of America's judicial system, the old ghost of white supremacy still whispered, still ruled, still shaped the political and economic systems to serve the powerful and to deny the powerless.
Jerry Taylor, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Orange Peel podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Been looking forward to it.
Abilene Christian is one of our premier Christian universities. And so they're fortunate to have you, and we're fortunate to have Abilene still active and training people to make contributions in the world.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great institution, and we've been blessed to have been on faculty here for that amount of time, and had no idea that when I was a student at Southwestern Christian College that I would eventually be on the faculty here, having heard some of the horror stories of some of my mentors who sought entrance into Abilene Christian College before 1962, and how they had to go to the Methodist school here at McMurray to be accepted in enrollment at a Methodist college here in Abilene. One of those persons was Nokomis Yeldale, who was a longtime minister there in Memphis at the Vance Avenue Church of Christ, and eventually moved to Norris Road. But he also preached here in Abilene at the North 10th and Treadaway Church of Christ, where I've been preaching when I'm in town for the past 10 years, since 2015. So I'm kind of following in his footsteps, and he certainly had a tremendous impact on my life as Dr. Andrew Hairston has. So those are two iconic figures that have a profound influence in my life.
He had a profound influence in my life too, as I'm sure you well know, and I miss him dearly already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here we are, 2025, and we're still talking about race in this nation. You would think we would have figured this out by now, wouldn't you? A great football player named Jim Brown. I don't know if you remember him or not, but Jim
Yeah.
Brown said that the race problem in America is a social pathology that absolutely defies rational analysis. And
Yeah.
I don't think that has been proven untrue since he made the statement. It is
Yeah.
really something that we contend with as a nation and still haven't unraveled. So, as an expert on the subject, can I get you to just kind of give us a state of the union? Where are we as a church, as the church? Where are we as the country in your view in race relations?
Well, I know that what I shall say will run the risk of offending um, some people, but truth is the truth. I believe that what we are facing in this country is something that is engulfing the entire planet, and that is uh, a but what we're experiencing in this country is a global event. There are those, according to what I've read in their writings, that there is a fear going all the way back to 1914. The book written by Stoddard, um, and Madison Grant is another writer of that time. And one of the books was entitled The Rising Tide of Color Against Global White Supremacy. The Rising Tide of Color Against Global White Supremacy. And the thesis of his book, and he unfolded it in plain language, is that the nations of color and the people of color on the planet were outnumbering the white race on the planet. And if it were not curtailed or stopped or obstructed, that if the numbers continue to increase among the black and brown people of the earth, and the numbers continue to decrease among the white population of the planet, it won't be long until the white race is completely replaced or no longer exists on the face of the earth. And so when we hear all of this talk about immigrants, getting rid of the immigrants, taking back um, civil rights gains that have been made, and a total erasure of Black history and so forth and so on, that is a desperate attempt to turn back the hands of time, that if we cannot outbreed you, then uh, we have to take measures to slow down the advance to the white race. And so that's the hard belief that, or the hard truth, some people find it difficult.
Yes, I think you're dead on. Now, this idea of white supremacy got started, I think, somewhere in the 16th century,
Mhm.
and ironically, by white Christians, white European Christians.
Yes, that's true.
And so the irony is that Christians came up with such an unchristian view of other peoples.
hmm hmm
What can we do?
Well, I would say um, what we can do has to be preceded by what we can be. And the most revolutionary act that an individual can carry out is to overcome the fear of death. Because the greatest weapon that any empire or any dictatorship or any tyrannical government has at its disposal against people is the same thing that Rome used against Jesus, and the emperors used against the followers of Jesus, which was the threat of death. And as we look in the Bible as Christians, we come to find out that that's why Jesus came, to confront death face to face. His whole life and ministry was about confronting death face to face and overcoming the threat of death, the fear of death. And that's why they could not control him. That's why they had to kill him, to put fear in the hearts of other people, to say that if you go this route and you resist the will of the emperor, you resist the will of Rome, then you will die suspended with your arms stretched out on the Roman cross. And Jesus knew that's what was going to happen to him. He was not taken by surprise, but he made the choice to confront the fear of death. And you look at all of the great martyrs that have come through, some during our lifetimes. They had to come face to face with the threat of death. They got death threats. Their families got death threats. And they said, do what you have to do, but I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to do God's will. And we have been lulled into a comfortable sleep by the seductive powers of this world to get us addicted to comfort, to get us addicted to the false belief that we can do something to stave off the eventual and the inevitable. Yeah. The greatest threat to any empire would be an individual or a group of individuals that have overcome the fear of the threat of death and the fear of death itself.
I think you're dead on in that we've been lulled to sleep with comforts. We're giving up privacy for the comfort of or the convenience of electronic devices. We're giving up our freedoms as well because we want to remain comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we not see the trap?
I think people can see the trap, but they've been seduced. They've been seduced.
Yeah.
I mean, they've fallen in love with the lie. They've fallen in love with falsehood because it allows them to remain comfortable in the state of isolation. We've been cut off from other people. We've been baptized into the religion of meism. Only one that I care about is me, even when I see other human beings suffering. So we've been desensitized to our own humanity. And as a result of being desensitized to our own humanity, we're desensitized to the humanity of others.
Yes.
And so it's easy to control and manipulate a people when they become dependent upon the money supply that's owned, operated, and controlled by the empire or the emperor, because the money supply is always connected to the food supply.
Yes.
And so if you threaten people with the thought of starvation, that is going to impact your belly, your stomach, if you don't conform, then, people love to eat. I'm one of them. And if we don't develop the habit of fasting and praying together, we will not have the spiritual strength nor the physical stamina to endure when scarcity is engineered in this country, as it is being right now. You get rid of the field workers, you cause the crops to die in the land, the produce to die. You cut off connections with other nations around the world that's providing food stuff for us. You're creating a scenario of starvation. And you starve the people, you can humble the people. You humble the people, then you can control and manipulate the people for a piece of bread.
I believe the imperialistic tendencies of our majority leaders in this nation are really what's going to lead this nation, or is leading this nation, into decline.
Yes.
And one of the first signs of the decline of a nation is when there is no concern for the poor.
Yes.
What can we as Christians do to turn that around?
I think Christians have to realize that there's only two kinds of wisdom by which you can live life. One is a heavenly wisdom, which is peaceable, considerate, impartial. The other one is worldly wisdom, which is full of envy and competition and selfishness, selfish ambition. It's demonic. And so you have two wisdoms, as you have two ways, which we can, two roads, two paths that we can walk upon.
All right. So let me take us to another place. It's amazing to me how lies are more believable than truth. One lie is that as a result of DEI, white folks are being disenfranchised. Research has shown by some of the most respectable firms in this country that the biggest beneficiary of DEI is white women. The second biggest beneficiary is the LGBTQ community. And the third is white men.
Right.
The least gains with DEI have been enjoyed by Black people. But to hear it told, the majority population is being disenfranchised.
Right.
So it seems to be that the larger the lie, the easier it is to be believed. Do you have any recommendation on how we can approach these types of misinformation and combat the negative impact they're having?
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion, just like food stamps and welfare, a Black face was put on it to hide the fact that most of the recipients were not Black people. They were white people in the other communities that you mentioned. But it was used to tap into the resentment towards Black people, to tap into that anger and hatred that's been trained into the DNA of the white population in this country since, like you say, before the beginning of slavery. That ideology was being hashed out by white Christians. And so how do you demonize something? You put Black faces on it and high positions, when in reality it gives the false impression to Black America that we're advancing. And you put one token in place, and so I think we're going to have to view this not as a curse, but as a blessing as African Americans, and figure out how can we develop systems that will enhance and benefit Black life, and get us strong enough that we can then practice diversity, equity, and inclusion towards others. That we now embody the very principles that were demolished by just corporations and government, And we embrace that ourselves and build something that is beautiful. We have the intelligence. We now have the education to do it. We have the resources to do it. The only thing that we lack is unity.
You
And if
touched
we
on
could
the big
find a
one.
way to unify our, okay.
Yeah, you touched on the big one. We do like unity.
uh, begging and pleading for you to let us inside your house that you say you built without any help from anybody else. We'll let you have that. But I think we're going to ask you to not burn down the houses that we build. Don't come in and destroy the companies and organizations that we build. Because we're not just building them for ourselves, we're building them for you. We want to have a place where you can come home when you discover that the people at the very top of this empire hate you as much as they hate us. If you don't have $2 or $3 million, and so we're trying to build the community that God envisioned the oppressed Israelites as they existed in a nation of oppression in Egypt, and He called them out to form them into a human community based on love and hope and care and concern for the poor. And so Christians need to know that they are engaging in a spirit of antichrist when they hate the poor, because that is the humanity He came into the world identifying with, in the stable with animals. His parents didn't even have enough money to give birth to him in a hospital in a decent context. He came into the world identified as a poor child. And then his ministry tells you that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach the good news to the poor, and then to those who are incarcerated, to those who don't have health care, you know, and to stand opposed to the people in that category is to stand against the very life and ministry and teaching and being of Jesus Himself. That's the spirit of Antichrist. I say this especially to people who say that they're anti-abortion. You can't just be against abortion when it involves a baby in the womb. You got to be against it for the duration of a human being's life. But somebody who's been born and is in old age or middle age and need health care, food, clothing, shelter to be able to survive.
So Martin Luther King said, laws are not meant to change the heart. They're meant to restrain the heartless.
Mm-hmm.
So given that truth, what is the formula for changing the heart? Because democracy works when you have moral people in the country, and especially more moral people leading the country. Laws also work when you have moral people overseeing the judicial system. Well, proper relationships between people work when there's a proper respect between people. I'm thinking back, I think it was Truman who started what they dubbed the first DEI type of program because of compassion he felt for a Black soldier who was intentionally blinded for sitting in the wrong place on a bus. And because Truman himself was a soldier, and so he began to initiate change. So his heart was pricked, and that brought about change. So what can we everyday Christians do to change hearts that way?
Yeah, I do believe that it is absolutely essential for hearts to be changed. And in order to change hearts, we have to make sure that our hearts have been changed first. And that was supposed to be the leavening power of the church. And when the church loses its light in a society, that society is going down fast. because the church is supposed to be the humanizing element in a society. It's supposed to preserve as a salt. And so when that ability is gone from the church, then you will have more and more people becoming inhumane towards each other and trying to unhumanize other human beings when they don't have that lighthouse that's speaking the voice of heavenly wisdom into the hearts of human beings. So you have another voice. It is a technological voice that has infiltrated the minds of not only the American people, but Christians who live in America. And somebody called it the mind virus, the virus of the mind. And so you have false prophets that not only operate in pulpits now, but they operate on social media, YouTube videos, underground literature that's written to fill people's hearts with hate, to distort the heart, to make the heart sick. And if you don't have a balancing influence in a society to offset that worldly wisdom with spiritual wisdom, then you have a country that is set for total chaos. And you'll see people expressing the worst kind of human beingness that you could ever see with human eyes. And so what should the church do? The church has to admit that it has been more a thing. They have preached the gospel of race instead of the gospel of grace. And the white church has been more committed to the religion of white supremacy, to their white skin, to their white savior than they have to the colorless love that the brown-skinned Jew was willing to express through his life, that he came to model for us. And so until the church can, and I'm going to say specifically the white church, and to some degree the black church, until we can admit that the church has apostatized under the influence of a false gospel, to where it turns people against each other based on politics and gender and race and all those other things. So, as long as the church stayed out of politics, it seems as if politics was more humane and more respectable. But the more the Christian church, evangelical church, got involved in politics, the nastier it got. And so it says more to us about the sickness in the heart of the Christian evangelical church than it does about the sickness that's in the country itself, in the heart of the country itself.
How would you respond to that misguided individual who says that he or she believes that God intended for whites to rule over blacks? Just look at history and which race has led the most technological and civic improvements in the world. What would you say to that person?
I would say they better hope that there's no such thing as reincarnation, because they may come back as a black person.
I like that.
Yeah, would they make that comment if that particular belief were true? But they have to also take into account where did all of the technological advancements, where did they come from? What was the origin of all of that? What was the great civilization before the Western civilization? And they have to trace that all the way back to Egypt.
Yes.
And so Egypt, even though they say Egypt, it's a part of Africa. And so Africans have had their day in terms of being the pinnacle of humanity, in terms of math and science. And a lot of what we benefit from today, we have it as a result of, Europeans going down into Africa and sitting at the feet of some of the wisest human beings on the planet at that time. And so anything that is invented or discovered today has to trace its roots back to that. And regardless of which civilization was at the pinnacle of creation at the time, you got to go further than that, back to the creative mind of God. And he's done some amazing creative things through Black people on the planet today. It's just that white supremacy will keep them hidden and will put a lamp or a shade over their light to try to make sure that nothing threatens the current understanding of white supremacy. So you have to keep the light from shining upon Black people and brown people that would threaten that kind of false belief.
Let's talk about integration a little bit. You know, our predecessors who led us to the relative improvements we enjoy today racially found that integration, they thought, was the only path to rooting out the problems of racism. Because, you know, if you're living side by side and you're going to school side by side, then it's much more difficult to discriminate. But one of the things that happened with integration is there's a certain amount of loss that went with it. And that is the ethos in the Black community began to change. So what grade would you put on, or rather, what would you have to say about integration and its benefits and downsides?
Well, my belief is that we did not really experience true integration in this country. I believe that we experienced, as Black people, we experienced disintegration because the intention all along was not two whole groups that were whole and healthy with equal power coming together to work synergistically, interdependently with one another. But you had one group that had all the power, all the money, all the institutions that were vibrant and well-funded, welcoming another group that was doing the best that they could with the crumbs that were doled out to them. And we did a masterful job with what we had. But we had to sacrifice what we had built to that moment and trust that the people that were telling us we were welcome to come into the house that they had built, that they were going to do right by us. So we walked in, and then Dr. King, at the end of his life, before they killed him, concluded that we had walked into a burning house. And he said with his own mouth that the American dream, in his opinion, had become the American nightmare. But when he came to that realization, they shut him out. They cut him off, snuffed his life out before he could really talk about the failure of this supposedly integration. And so where they integrated was in the school system. They got rid of our professors. They got rid of our school masters, Black school masters, and they put us under white school masters. And so whoever you turn your mind over to, you turn your future over to them to shape and to harness and to use that intelligence that's coming through Black bodies. And then you infuse that into a system that is still controlled by whites and who still believe that whites are supreme. They didn't send Black teachers, Black principals into white schools. They sent only the children, and they got rid of a lot of principals and a lot of administrators that had jobs in the Black segregated schools. And so it was never true integration. It was assimilation. And you read the writings of some of the white supremacists in the past, they will say that if you cannot assimilate, then you must exterminate. And I think that's what we're beginning to see, the early stages of that philosophy, and that Black people have gotten too educated and they are too proud of their heritage as Africans and learning things that they've never learned before, because now we can read and write and do first-class research ourselves. That's too much of a threat. And so democracy is now a liability for those who want to maintain, white control in this country. And South Africans have been expert counselors to the white people here, teaching them how to maintain white control as a white minority over a Black and brown majority. And they're taking their advice. That's why you have Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, who are South Africans, and they're taking the lead and showing this country how to hold on to white power and not let democracy cause them to give it over into the hands of what they believe to be their enemies, who want to get revenge and resentment and all of that.
What's sad about that is Black people have beautiful hearts, and
Yes.
white people, their fears are misplaced, because all Black folks want is an equal opportunity in this earth.
Right.
And I think there's a fear that we want to subjugate them the way we've been subjugated, and I don't believe that is a desire in the heart of majority of Blacks.
Right. I agree. Yeah, and that's what our white brothers and sisters are going to have to realize, that we're not the enemy. We're not the enemy. We're the victims of projection. You have other people projecting on us of what they would do if they were us, but that's not how we're operating. We just want to live, be whole people, happy people, joyful people, and we're not trying to plan a war against anybody.
Right. You talked about the importance of education, importance of having our own businesses, being entrepreneurs, and we certainly have enjoyed seeing some Blacks do very well in the entrepreneur world and in business and corporations and so forth. But I'm reminded of the white race riots in Tulsa. It seems that when Blacks do too well, that there will always be a move to quash it. And so I think it's a tribute to our race that we are in as good a shape as we're in, given everything we've been up against. The assault on the family, the assault on education, the assault on our communities, institutionalized racism, the diversion of our youth to penitentiaries. I think we represent almost 40% of the prison population, and we're only 13% of the U.S. population. So clearly something's going on. So I think there's reason to celebrate, because it is the way of Christ to do the hard thing, is it not?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is very hard to do it the way Jesus did it.
So, I wanted to add a positive note in that we should celebrate that we're still here. Your mentor and mine shared with me not long before he passed that he felt that our cultural identity would probably disappear in 50 or 60 years. And I hope that's not correct. Do you think that is probable?
Well, I think it is inevitable if we continue the trajectory that we're on as a false integrated society, because we have failed to teach our children while entrusting their education and their learning into the hands of people who never wanted to teach them in the first place. And so, how do you teach a child to maintain a sheep-like nature when he's educated by a wolf that sees his very existence as a source of food, as a source of its own survival? And so now you have young men and young women who have not had one single Black teacher from kindergarten all the way through high school. And so they have not had one Black coach. So the white coaches and the white female teachers have become surrogate parents for our own children. And that influence has been established in a very subliminal, subconscious way that now they view authority figures as being white more than they do Black. So we can speak to our youth, and they already have drawn the conclusion that our intelligence is inferior to the intelligence of those that they've been getting their information and their education and their knowledge from for 12 years of their life. And then they go to private white institutions or universities sponsored by the state, and they still see a lack of folk there that look like them in authority positions. So what else can they conclude other than I may have Black skin, but I'm white on the inside? And what culture is my culture? And so I think our mentor was correct in that he saw it further down the road because he had been able to see how we had changed since the 50s and since integration, and so and he just looked further down the road that if we continue down this path, you're going to have people not even knowing what it means to have a culture that was rich and vibrant, that produced the spirituals, that produced the blues, the rhythm and blues, and rap and hip hop and all of those things, because we will have even lost our creative spark to even bring fresh and new things into the world, because we will have bought into the lie of our own Black inferiority. And so, I think he saw something there, but I think we're in the midst of a sea change right now to where people are getting a wake-up call, and they're saying that you all were welcomed to the house, but you only got to the front porch. And now you're not even welcome on the front porch. Matter of fact, you're going to have to leave the premises altogether.
Yeah.
And where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We're in the same state we were in at the end of slavery. Kicked off the plantation. We had been cared for by the plantation owner, food, clothing, and shelter. Didn't have to worry about where we're going to get food from. But now slavery is over, kicked off the plantation, and now you got to learn how to survive on your own without even having been trained or received any kind of counseling to help you to deal with the traumatic experience of slavery. You're just pushed out there on your own. And if you are vagrant, you are standing around unemployed. Now they have this detention centers waiting for vagrants or homeless people. So the same system, the systems may have changed a little bit, but the same spirit has been in place, and it never died. It just changed its strategy.
That's the ugly truth about institutionalized hate.
Yes.
You can't root it out very easily without collapsing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And talking about collapsing the whole thing, I'm going to start wrapping our time up. So let's talk about the potential collapse of this nation. As you know, Israel, every time they turn their backs on God, things didn't go very well.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often he bring in a conqueror from the outside. Nebuchadnezzar comes to mind as one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so is God's wrath moving upon America because of the hate that is rising in this nation against God?
Mm. Mm. Yes. Yes. Um, yes, I believe that when a nation or an individual or a group of people disconnect or disassociate from the ground of their being, from the divine ground of their being, then they become unproductive. They become fruitless. Only a connection to the divine life of God can produce fruit of goodness and kindness and care and concern and love. When you get disconnected from God, um, then yeah, you'll see all kind of abuse and hate and violence taking place. So it's not what God has done to us, it's what we've done to ourselves by disconnecting from God. As Cecil B. DeMille said in that movie, The Ten Commandments, that man does not break the Ten Commandments, he breaks himself against the Ten Commandments.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So what we see going on now is an indication that we have drifted not so far from democracy, but we've drifted from God, who gives us that heavenly wisdom to teach us and to show us how to be good human beings. That's what Tocqueville supposedly said. Now, some people debate whether it was accurate uh, to be attributed to him, but he says that America, on his visit here, he said, America is good because America is great. He said, when America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. And it's ironic that we have these people running around talking about make America great again. Well, you can't be great if you don't practice goodness. You will become the opposite of being great when you practice the opposite of being good. Evil is always destructive. It destroys the people who use it as well as the people they use it against.
Hmm.
And that's what we're seeing going on here now. And that's why I said they've chosen not to practice the Sermon on the Mount. You have religious leaders, preachers, churches saying you can't win the presidency if you try to do it based on the Sermon on the Mount. You can't win political races if you try to practice a Sermon on the Mount. You'll end up losing. Well, if you're a follower of Jesus, he said you love your life, you're going to lose it. If you lose your life, you'll gain it. Everything he taught in the Sermon on the Mount stands diametrically opposed to what these people are trying to propagate today in the name of Jesus and under the banner of Christianity. It's a false gospel. It's being advanced by a spirit of Antichrist. It is anti-good. It hates people who seek to be good. You know, there's a phrase that Paul says, they're haters of those who are good. And so I think in light of what you're saying, that's what we see happening to the United States of America. There were people who voted because they thought that other folks were going to be hurt by the outcome of the election. But they're the main ones screaming, "Ow, you know, what, you're taking our jobs too. We didn't think you were going to hurt us." Well, that's how sneaky and deceitful evil is. It'll lead you to think that it's going after your enemy. And when you find out, you are in the rank of the enemy. And that's what America is waking up now and realizing that you can't do evil by your neighbor and expect for evil not to notice you, to come back to knock on your door.
Oh, that's profound. That's profound. Well, we're about out of time, and I want to give you the last word. So if you would, share with our audience, this has been kind of a downer of a discussion. I don't think people are going to walk away from this discussion smiling, but they will be benefited.
Okay.
But give us a word of warning and a word of hope.
Okay. A word of warning, I would say, if you want to know the current blueprint that's being used today, that's been endorsed by our vice president and endorsed by our president's son, the book you want to read from front to end, from beginning to the end, is the book called Unhumans. Unhumans. And I would suggest that every Christian, every American, everybody should read this book. And it's called Unhuman. And the author is Jack Posobiec, 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 and Joshua Lisec, Lisec is the last name. And it's called Unhumans. And I would say just read that book and you'll have the best warning that you could ever have in this current hour. And not to read it is to be left unprepared. And the word of hope is that there is life after death. And that is, to me, a joyful thing to think about. There is life after death. And when we realize that there's life after death, only then can we experience life before death. Because only the person who has overcome the fear of death is fit to live and will have the courage to live. And as long as we are afraid to die, we will not have the courage to stand up and speak truth to power and to act defiantly in order to put God's will above Caesar's will and to put the will of the kingdom of God above the will of the state.
I can't remember who said it, but it goes this way. It says, to truly live, you must find something worth dying for.
That's right. Absolutely. Yep. That is so true. Mm-hmm.
Well, very profound words. Thank you for the recommendation on the book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. This has been an outstanding conversation. I really hope maybe we can do this again because I don't think we even scratched the surface on this one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'd love to do this again, Brother Avery, and just appreciate you encouraging me to take part in this. And yeah, I look forward to the next time around.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to your day. And thanks again. And it has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. It's mutual.
Dear Lord, we honor all the brave people of color and white citizens who have stood, and many still stand arm in arm, fighting, suffering, and sometimes dying to bring about racial harmony in our land. In Jesus' name, amen.